Good afternoon to all of you. Today is another topic of regional circulation is here. That is today topic is splenic and skeletal muscle circulation. So what is the main objective of this regional circulation under which this topic comes? The primary objective, as we know, the regional circulation is to supply the oxygen and nutrient to the various organ and tissue of the body and to remove CO2 and metabolites from the tissue. So this is effectively achieved by distributing the cardiac output suitably to various organs based on their functional and metabolic requirements and controlling the rate of blood flow to these organs. So in this regard, today I am going to teach you about the splenic circulation and skeletal muscle circulation. So first comes, what is the definition? So this splenic circulation means circulation of the blood through the abdominal viscera. Means abdominal visceral circulation comes under this topic. So this has got three components. First, circulation through the GI tracts proper and the mesenteric attachments, that is intestinal circulation. Second comes circulation through the liver, that is hepatic circulation. And third comes circulation through the spleen, that is splenic circulation. Okay. First come to intestinal circulation. As we all know, the major function of the intestine is digestion and absorption of the nutrients. So the normal intestinal blood flow in rest is about 20% of the cardiac output at rest, which increases to about 50% following after a large meal. If this increase in blood flow, proper digestion and absorption do not occur. Without this increase in blood flow, proper digestion and absorption do not occur. Come to the blood supply, arterial and venous blood supply. First, arterial blood supply. The GI tract is supplied by three main arteries, that is celiac, superior mesenteric and inferior mesenteric artery. First, superior mesenteric artery is the largest branch of the aorta that carries more than 10% of the cardiac output and supplies the many parts of the small and large intestine. The branches of these artery form an extensive vascular network in the submucosa of the GI tracts, and branches from these arteries penetrate deep into the muscular layer and form the arterioles, and the arterioles supply the tip of the villi. The intestinal mucosa receives about 60 to 70% of the total intestinal blood flow. This picture shows the blood supply of gut by the superior mesenteric artery. You can see here the different branches of this artery supplying the different part of GI tracts. Come to the venous drainage. The capillary in the villi drain into the venules that finally drain into the mucosal venules and then into the veins. The direction of the blood flow in the arterioles and venules in a villi is opposite to each other, which forms a typical counter-current exchange system, and this permits the diffusion of oxygen from the arterioles to venules directly. Therefore, supply of the oxygen to the mucosal cell at the tip of the villus, that is villus capillary, is reduced. The normal blood flow, gastric blood flow about 40 ml per 100 gram of the tissue per minute. Intestinal blood flow is about 60 ml per 100 gram of tissue per minute. Pancreatic blood flow is about 80 ml per 100 ml of tissue per minute. Now come to the regulation, how this intestinal circulation regulates. Under this comes neural regulation. First, second, auto-regulation, and third, regulation by GI activity. The first comes the neural regulation. In this comes the sympathetic stimulation, causes vasoconstriction of the mesenteric arteries and arterioles, thereby reducing the blood flow. These effects are mediated via alpha receptor. During exercise, the sympathetic vasoconstriction shifted the blood from the mesenteric vascular bed to the skeletal muscle. Second comes auto-regulation by metabolic and myogenic mechanism. In metabolic regulation occurs mainly by the adenosine, osmolarity, and potassium. Adenosine causes vasodilatation and increases blood flow. Increased osmolarity of the blood passes through the intestine as occur following ingestion causes vasodilatation, and potassium causes vasodilatation. Third comes regulation by GI activity. GI blood flow increases with the increase in GI activity as occur during digestion of the food. Increased absorption of food also affect the intestinal blood flow. There are several products of digestion like chyme, glucose, and fatty acids. These are the potent vasodilators. What is the physical importance? First, functional hyperemia. GI blood flow increases by the food intake, which is partially due to secretion of GI hormones like gastrin and cholecystokinin, and partially to the product of digestion. And this increased blood flow help in digestion and absorption of food. Do not perform the heavy exercise after meal. This is because immediate after a meal, one should not perform heavy exercise because during exercise the sympathetic stimulation causes splenic vasoconstriction that diverts the blood from GI tract to the exercising muscles. Therefore, the blood will not be adequately available to carry out the GI secretion and motility and for assisting in digestion and absorption of the food. So heavy meal के बाद heavy exercise नहीं करना है. Second comes the hepatic circulation. As we all know, the liver is an important visceral organ as it performs the major metabolic activity of the body. Liver requires adequate blood supply to carry out its routine function. Hence, the liver blood flow is more to liver, and hepatic blood flow constitutes about 28% of the total cardiac output. Blood supply is from the two sources, first portal vein and second hepatic artery. The portal vein provide about 75% of the total blood flow to the liver as the blood has already passed through the capillary bed of the GI tracts. The oxygen concentration is less in these portal veins. Second comes hepatic artery. It provides the 25% of the blood to the liver. It is fully saturated with oxygen. Therefore, the oxygen utilized by liver is primarily derived from the hepatic artery blood flow. The normal blood flow is about 58 ml per 100 gram per minute. So this picture shows the blood supply to the liver from the portal vein. How portal vein forms and supply the liver. Come to the regulation of hepatic blood flow. Regulation is by four methods. First, neural regulation, metabolic regulation, auto-regulation, and regulation by the intestinal activity. First, both the hepatic artery and the portal vein are innervated by sympathetic vasoconstrictor fibers. Metabolic regulation: with increased hepatic activity, the accumulated metabolite like the carbon dioxide and hydrogen ion causes vasodilatation and increases the hepatic blood flow. In autoregulation, the portal venous system do not auto-regulate its blood supply. However, the autoregulation exists for the hepatic artery blood flow. The activity of the GI tracts increases blood flow to the liver via the portal system. What is the clinical importance? The liver filters the blood and removes the toxic substances before allowing it into the general circulation. The nutrients absorbed from the GI tract passes through the liver and are stored or metabolized according to the need of body. When the central venous pressure is elevated, as occur in congestive heart failure, the hydrostatic pressure in the vessels of the liver increases, and this results in exudation of the fluid into the liver tissue and causes the tender hepatomegaly. And this is an important feature of heart failure. So, in patient of heart failure, we find tender hepatomegaly on clinical examination. Fourth, fibrosis of the liver. The increased hepatic vascular resistance, which increases the portal venous pressure, which consequently increases the capillary hydrostatic pressure in the splenic vascular bed, and this results in transduction of the fluid into the abdominal cavity, which causes the ascites. Fifth comes portal hypertension. Esophageal varices occurs due to this portal hypertension, which may rupture and bleeds and to causes hematemesis. To prevent this, portal cavern shunt is performed. During hemorrhagic shock, about 60% of the blood from the liver can be expelled into the systemic circulation to increase the blood volume, which is achieved by constriction of the capacitance vessels of the liver by the sympathetic stimulation. So, liver is also an important reservoir of the blood. In this group, third come splenic circulation. The circulation through the spleen, that is the circulation through the spleen. The blood supply is by the splenic artery. Regulation of this splenic blood flow is by sympathetic vasoconstrictor fibers. Sympathetic stimulation diverts blood from the splenic circulation to the hepatic or the systemic circulation. What is the clinical importance? The sympathetic stimulation causes vasoconstriction and contraction of the smooth muscle present in capsule and trabeculae of the spleen, and this contraction releases the adequate amount of blood into the general circulation, which serve as a protective mechanism in exercise and shock. Now come to the skeletal muscle circulation. What is the functional aspect of the circulation? Skeletal muscle constitutes the largest mass of the body. It is constitute about 40% of the total body weight. And blood supply is only about 15% of the cardiac output. However, the resistance offered by blood vessel of the skeletal muscle account for 25% of systemic vascular resistance. Therefore, caliber of the skeletal muscle blood vessel contributes significantly to control the blood pressure. The circulation of the blood through the skeletal muscle also depends greatly on the activity of the muscle. Normal blood flow is about 2 to 6 ml per 100 gram per minute. During exercise, the flow increases to 20 to 50% time the resting level. Blood supply. The blood supply to the skeletal muscle is derived from the skeletal muscle arteries. One of the important features of this circulation is the presence of large number of arteriovenous channels, and these blood vessels short circuit the blood from the arterial side to the venous side by bypassing the capillaries. These are innervated by the sympathetic fibers, which are of two types: dilator system, vasodilator system, and the vasoconstrictor system. In sympathetic vasodilator system, the fibers supplying the blood vessel of the skeletal muscle are cholinergic. Therefore, stimulation of these fibers result in vasodilatation. And sympathetic vasoconstriction systems are noradrenergic fibers that secrete the noradrenaline and causes vasoconstriction. Regulation. First, neural regulation. At rest, the resistance vessel exhibit a vessel tone and occur due to the continuous low frequency activity of the sympathetic vasoconstrictor system, and this tonic activity is greatly influenced by the activity of the baroreceptor reflex, and stimulation of these baroreceptor result in dilatation of blood vessel of the skeletal muscle and decrease in carotid sinus pressure, and this causes vasoconstriction. The muscle resistance vessels contribute significantly to the maintenance of the blood pressure, as blood vessel in the skeletal muscle constitute the largest vascular bed in body. What happens during exercise? At the beginning of the exercise, the stimulation of the sympathetic cholinergic fibers increases the blood flow to the skeletal muscle due to vasodilation. But once the exercise continues, the metabolites accumulate in the existing muscle, uh, in the exercising muscle, and causes vasodilation. And these metabolites are and the local hypoxia causes the dilatation of the precapillary sphincters and increases blood flow through the capillary, and this increase oxygen and nutrient supply to the skeletal muscle. Local regulation is regulated by the metabolic factors like ATP, adenosine, hydrogen ion, carbon dioxide, and lactic acid, and hypoxia. And these all causes vasodilation and increases the blood flow. Increase in temperature which occur during the muscle exercise also contributes to vasodilation. Regulation by physical factor. During exercise, the contraction of the skeletal muscle mechanically compresses the blood vessel, therefore decreases the blood flow. Thus, during active muscle contraction, blood flow is minimal. During a strong sustained contraction, the blood flow almost ceases temporarily. However, in intermittent contraction, the blood flow occurs during the relaxation period, and venous valves prevent the backflow of the blood in the veins between the contraction. What is the clinical importance of this skeletal muscle circulation? The skeletal muscle bed is the largest vascular bed in the body. Therefore, the tone of the resistance vessel of the skeletal muscle contributes significantly to the maintenance of systemic blood pressure. Second importance is blood present in the skeletal vascular bed contributes significantly to the venous return, that is the skeletal muscle pump activity. When the skeletal muscle pump activity increases, the venous return increases, and therefore cardiac output will also increases. Third importance is when the venous wall become incompetent, especially of the superficial leg veins, as seen in pregnancy or in old age, the veins become dilated and tortuous, and these are known as varicose veins. So, what happens in this condition? The cardiac output decreases in such condition due to stasis of blood in the dilated and incompetent veins, and these conditions are treated by injection of the sclerosing agent or by using elastic stockings. So, this is all about the skeletal muscle circulation and splenic circulation, that is splenic circulation, that is the visceral abdominal visceral circulation. So this is all about this topic. Thank you.